Have you ever noticed that certain conversations or even people leave you feeling a particular way? Maybe it's a really good feeling, like true connection, fulfillment, or belonging. Or maybe it's not so great, leaving you frustrated, disconnected, or defensive. And sometimes it's kind of hard to pinpoint why. Did the good feelings come from a friend who just listened better? Did they validate your feelings even if they didn't agree? Did the bad feeling leave you defensive because no matter what you said, they had a rebuttal, and you didn't even really know the topic was debatable? Or maybe you just felt out of sync? I remember when I first gained the perspective to start tuning into this. I was blown away. Someone had challenged me to notice which relationships drained me and which energized me. I was surprised to realize that the person I believed to be my best friend at the time was actually one of the draining relationships. But I was so used to our dynamic that I didn't even notice. Maybe it wasn't always like that, but once I saw it, I realized it had been happening for at least a year. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. So pretty soon that 10-year friendship dissolved. The question is, do certain dynamics just exist as they are, and you'll never feel that harmony? Or is there something you can do to spark it, to align better with the other person? With my friend, it wasn't always that way, so something must have shifted, right? Could I have shifted it back? Or is that just the way the universe gives us a sign to move on? Well, here's what I've learned. Relationships are mirrors. I spent a long time in the early stages of my spiritual growth taking signs that vibes were off and thinking that people just needed to be cut out. What I see now is that even some of my most difficult relationships have clues about areas I need to work on, not the other person. They reflect back to me the places where I judge myself, where I'm holding on to old patterns. And to be clear, I am not saying anyone should stay in a relationship that they know they should leave, whether romantic or friendship. But sometimes we're just too quick to blame someone else. If we are even just a little bit willing to see the gift in these reflections, we can evolve more quickly and find peace in any situation. Too often, when we shift our own patterns, the people and circumstances around us shift too. And that starts with our own communication. So today we're going to learn how to shift your life by asking better, more intentional questions, and how to create those moments of true connection more regularly. Our guest is Topaz Adizes. He's an Emmy Award-winning writer, director, and experienced design architect. His works have been selected to Cannes, Sundance, IDFA, and South by Southwest. He's been featured in the New Yorker magazine, Vanity Fair, and the New York Times, and he's garnered an Emmy for New Approaches to Documentary and 2 World Press Photo Awards for immersive storytelling and interactive documentary. He's also currently the founder and executive director of the experience design studio, The Skin Deep. So 3 key things we will learn are the hidden power of acceptance in relationships, how asking thought-provoking questions can revolutionize your conversations and relationships, and how to craft questions that avoid dead-end answers and spark powerful, transformative discussions. Can we talk about back-to-school chaos for a second? The kids are getting back into routines, everyone's schedules are crazy, and suddenly you're supposed to have dinner on the table every night like some kind of magician. But want to know what I figured out? Shopping, planning, and cooking food really can be simple and stress-free, which is why I love Hungry Root. Hungry Root takes the stress out of mealtime by filling your cart with personalized picks and planning your week of meals, getting smarter with every order. With over 15,000 recipes to choose from each week, many ready in just 15 minutes or less, it's a huge lifesaver on those busy weeknights. I personally love their Smart Cart technology. It learns what I actually like and then recommends groceries, recipes, and supplements tailored to my tastes and needs. Plus, I love the kids' snacks section where I get these really easy snacks to just keep in the car or throw in our to-go bags or lunch boxes for those of you who need them. They screen out over 200 additives, including high fructose corn syrup and artificial sweeteners. They only source high-quality meat and seafood with no hormones or antibiotics, and they carry trusted brands like Oatly and Vital Farms. The time that I have gotten back has been incredible. Take advantage of this exclusive offer. For a limited time, get 40% off your first box, plus get a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/mindlove and use code MINDLOVE. That's hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/mindlove, code MINDLOVE. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Let's be real about something. Workplace stress is not just part of the job anymore. 61% of people are dealing with stress levels that are way beyond normal, and it is not sustainable. I used to think that grinding through stress was some kind of badge of honor. Push harder, sleep less, ignore what your body was telling you. And it nearly broke me when I was working for startups. And look, maybe that voice in your head telling you to make a change is right. Maybe you do need to quit your job or completely flip your life. But whether you're making big moves or just trying to survive your current situation, you need tools to handle it well. And that's where therapy comes in. Modern therapy teaches you how to set boundaries without the guilt, how to trust your intuition instead of second-guessing yourself constantly, how to make better decisions from a place of clarity instead of chaos. And BetterHelp is the world's largest online therapy platform with over 30,000 therapists. They've got a 4.9 rating from 1.7 million reviews because it actually works. You can talk to someone from anywhere, and you can switch therapists anytime if it's not the right fit. A vacation won't fix chronic stress, but the right support can help you navigate whatever comes next. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. My listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/mindlove. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/mindlove.
So this is probably the biggest offering. This is take home is stop looking for answers, create better questions. The question shapes the answer. There is so much power in the one who asked the question and because you're shaping the answers by the question you're asking. Why do we fight so much? Okay, you're going to get a long list of why we fight so much. If you shift that to what's our biggest challenge right now, and what do you think it's teaching us? Like, why are we asking a question for a list of why we fight so much? How does that make you feel empowered? How does that give you agency? If you shift the question to what's our biggest challenge right now, and was it teaching us, then you're utilizing the challenge as a learning opportunity.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
So what inspired you to write a book focused on the power of questions to really deepen our relationships?
Well, it's kind of a result after doing the AND project for 10 years. It's a distillation of everything my team and I have learned from this really a project that we really honor and love. And in the back of my mind, in year 3, 4, 5, I just knew that at some point it'd be great to write a book. And writing is not my skill set. I'm more of a visual person and talking person, but not writing. But when, oddly enough, in 1 November, the same week as the world has it, I don't know, something was in the air, in the ether. I got 2 emails from 2 different editors saying, "Hey, have you ever considered writing a book?" I said, "Yeah, I've been waiting for this email." Spoke to both editors, and I went with Jill because Jill at Sasquatch Books, part of Penguin Random House, she just had been following the AND for years, and she knew the value. And she could bring so much to the book because she'd been following us and following these conversations, and so that's kind of how I came around to it. It was always like a seed of intention and hope, but really came about because Jill reached out and we went with it. And ultimately, the bottom line is, where do you learn how to have good conversations? You model them in your family, maybe with your friends, but you don't really. There's nowhere you learn it from. And for me and my team, we've had this honor of holding the space of incredible conversations. In the last 10, we're now in our 11th year of over 1,200 conversations. And we've learned something, and we've learned what works, and we wanted to share it with people. Because ultimately, if you have good conversations, you can have better relationships. Better relationships, better life.
From a young age, I learned that I was witty. My family was pretty witty, but I actually had to totally learn how to have conversations where I realized my mindset was the joke comes first. The joke doesn't care about your feelings. If you end up being the butt of this entire conversation, so be it. Because that's how my family is. And so when you said we learn conversations modeling from our family, I had like a 10-year flashback of going to college and people looking at me like, you're just mean. I'm like, well, what's the joke? They're laughing. So what inspired you with the And Project? Like, what was it about understanding conversations?
It's a long story, I guess, and there's many parts along the path that brought me there, and something that I really honor because it's an incredible experience to witness so many real, vulnerable, intimate conversations, right? It started with my parents' divorce. Was a young kid. They got divorced. I have a brother who's 15 months younger, so we were like, 3.5. I was 4, 3.5, 4, something like that. My brother was 15 months younger, and my parents got divorced, and I try to manage it. That was, I guess, Big Brother's way. That was my way of dealing with it, was trying to mediate. And that had an effect on me. Maybe it woke me up to the way humans deal with each other. Maybe it woke me up to trying to understand feelings or my own, or maybe maybe a search for intimacy, a search for connection. And then in my 20s, I grabbed a camera and I traveled, and I realized the power of the camera. The camera is a bridge. It's a door opener. You show up at someone's home, you show up in someone's life and say, hey, I have a few questions. If you don't have a pad and paper, if you don't have a camera, it's like, why are you asking these? Where are you coming from? You have a camera, it's like, I'm making a film. It's like, okay, then it's a door opener. It creates a space to have a conversation. And so after making films in my 20s and 30s, at some point I realized it's really interesting how this technology is shifting the way we're relating. And I was single in New York. I have another brother who's 16 years younger than I. And we were both living in New York, single. I was in my late 30s and he was in his early 20s. And I just saw how we were totally different, dating differently. How he was utilizing technology, text messaging, Tinder, all the dating platforms, and just communicating with and dating in a different way than I was. And I said, this is amazing. We humans are so good at change, at adapting to change, that we don't realize how much we've changed. And the profound experience of what we call love is shifting. The way we're connecting is shifting. I want to explore that. And so 10 years ago, I launched The Skin Deep, which is an experience design studio focused on exploring human connection in the modern age, in the digital age. And the first thing we built was this experience called The And, right? So think of it like there's a studio. The studio makes cool stuff. One of the things we made was The And The And is these videos where people come and they face each other. We film it with 3 cameras, and we give them questions to ask each other. And we always show the audience, you can see this all over YouTube and TikTok and all that, but always show you both faces. And that says something. What that says is that it's about the connection. It's not just about the speaker. It's about the listener too. And if you think about the content we watch, you're always seeing the speaker. You're not seeing the listener. You're not seeing them at the same time. So we're highlighting it's the connection that's important. It's the space between that's important. It's the relationship that's important. And that's why we call it the And, because the relationship is you and I, us and them. It's the and that connects us. That's the conjunction. So we're illuminating that connection. And so so that's how I got to it. And, sometimes I have to pinch myself and be like, wow, I can't believe I somehow ended up in this position. I'm so grateful. Because even today I was reviewing an edit that we're going to release for Father's Day, and I'm crying. And I'm just so moved by these people vulnerably sharing their experiences that are so moving. I know it's going to affect a lot of people watching. So it's a little digital dose of humanity is what we're creating, a little cornered humanity in the digital world.
That is so genius, because when we think about someone walking down an aisle, my first instinct is always to look at the groom and then look at the bridesmaids. Like, I'm looking at everyone's reactions. The only thing I really allow myself to watch on TV anymore is trash reality dating, just because I feel like there's not not as much politics behind it. It's a little more real, a little less trying to manipulate me. They're definitely trying to manipulate them, but that's for my entertainment, so it's fine. The joke comes first, remember. So yeah, but the reactions, like when somebody says something and they zoom in, and it might be a reaction from a whole different day, but the way they edit it is genius. But I'm reminded of this idea of the and, that space between. It's a different take on Napoleon Hill talks about the invisible council. And he talks about this idea that, and this is something I've integrated into my life, of one of the benefits of deeply knowing somebody. Even if it's deeply knowing through a ton of research and you never meet the person, you start to be able to call to them for thought. Like, well, what would this person do in this situation? What would Abe Lincoln do? What would Elon Musk do? Whatever it is. And it just calls to the idea that together, it's not 2 + 2, it's this other exponential force. The ideas that you and I would come up with together will be wildly different than if we were both sitting in our own corners coming up with a bunch of ideas, because we feed off of each other. There's a separate energy that's created. So I really love that idea of the and.
Yeah, the word that comes up for me when you say that is synergy.
Yes.
What is possible by the synergy of our connection? You and I are having this conversation here and now. It would be different now if you were speaking to another podcast guest. It would also be different if you and I were speaking tomorrow or next month. So there's a unique moment that's happening now that's creating a unique synergy that we're offering to the listeners, that they themselves are having a unique moment with us. I think that's a beautiful thing to be aware of, because it illuminates the experience that we call life. You're living a life. You're having an experience. You're having emotions, good, bad, hard, but you're living it. And how can we amplify this experience of living? It's in the relationships we have with others. Why? Because they reflect us back to us, right? Does that make sense? Like, I mean, it's very simple. It's when you have a makeup fight, makeup sex or makeup fight, after a fight, you make up with whoever it is, whether it's a friend, a partner, you feel better. You feel stronger. You know that your connection to that person can weather the storm because you've had a conflict, you've managed it, and it makes you feel stronger. And it reassures you that your connection with them is strong, and it gives you a greater sense of fulfillment, in my opinion. That's been my experience, right? And therefore, I'm not alone in this world, because ultimately, I feel that we all want to be seen.
We talk a lot on the show about how relationships are a reflection for us. And it's a reflection of parts of ourselves that we don't always like to see. I mean, it's a reflection of all sorts of things, but those shadow sides end up being reflected back even more. It's easy to grow, to do self-development in a cave somewhere. But it's when you're taking it out into the real world and interacting with people that you really see what shadows still need a little bit of light.
Absolutely. I think the test is not in the cave alone. The test is in the dance with others, especially with family members, especially with the people closest to you. That's where you can really, and isn't it interesting that the people closest to you, we often take most for granted? Oh, I know how my dad's going to respond. Oh, I know how my wife is going to respond. That's how they are. Wait a second. What if we asked your wife? What if we asked your dad? What if we asked your sister a different question? Then there's an opportunity for a new connection to be made, a new exploration to be seen, because we're asking well-constructed questions. We're asking different questions.
It's sort of unfair how the people closest to us become caricatures, because just like you said, we feel like we know them so much that we allow specific things to be emphasized or de-emphasized. I was watching a movie a while back, and it's funny. It was just like this random comedy. They're walking through the woods, and it was like a B-roll part that you just hear a conversation in the background of somebody saying something about, you never really know your parents. You have to, because you have no idea what they were like before kids. And it's something that I like picked up on. I was like, oh my God, that's about to change my life right now. And one of my friends has a difficult relationship with one of her parents. And she says she keeps a picture of her dad as a child right next to her computer to just remind like these are the things he's gone through. And we don't always take that into account because we just really think about who they are to us. But I love this idea of expanding what you'd even think to ask without projecting this idea, the caricature, back onto them already, because you're not allowing the space for them to be anything different than what you're already expecting.
Yeah. And I think that's because we're all looking for safety, right? So safety is saying, okay, well, this is predictable. That's in that corner. I know that's not going to change. That's there, right? This is safe. Everything here is under control. It's safe. But we should not confuse safety with discomfort, right? Safety is feeling a sense of mutual trust and security, and we're all on the same path, and there's a trust in our differences, if you will. But discomfort is an opportunity for growth. Every time if you look at any of your greatest achievements or accomplishments or something that you're really proud of, I promise you an hour before, 3 minutes before, a month before, you were shitting yourself. You did something that was really scary. That accomplishment, that sense of winning or whatever it is, of fulfillment, you have it because you accomplished it by overcoming discomfort. So in our lives, we like to create this safety, but we confuse safety also with comfort, not having discomfort. And the best is you have a safe space. And in that safe space, you explore discomfort. And so sometimes you put people that are close to you in the safe zone and you don't have the challenging conversations with them because then you feel unsafe. But no, it's not that you're unsafe. You're uncomfortable. And there's a very important question here that I do not have the answer to, which is how do you define a safe space? You know, I'm not a trained therapist. I've not been highly experienced in trauma. So I don't know the answer to that. But I can know that when you feel, okay, if I look at this person and I know that they want what's best for me and I want what's best for them, and yes, we're going through conflict, then I know there's a safe space, there's a safe trust there, but there are things that we have to handle and lean into discomfort.
That's hard. As a past people pleaser,
Yeah.
never even realized I was a people pleaser. I remember the amount of I've just avoided conflict for a really long time, and even still, I have to really watch that area. Mm-hmm. And there's a worry that I could say the wrong thing. And I feel like, you know how sometimes we choose life paths to help ourselves overcome exactly what we need to? Well,
Wait. You said life paths.
Yes.
Paths? Okay.
I chose a path where it's funny because I'm in a position where there can be way more backlash with the things that I say than in any of my personal relationships. So it's helped me overcome conflict. You know, one small thing, people are so triggered these days, and I'm all of a sudden I'm unfollowing this. And it's like, I actually didn't even really mean that. It just came out in a sentence because I was blabbering too much, whatever it is. And so it's really helped me be okay with showing up as my authentic self. But how do you start a conversation with somebody that's close to you and say, okay, maybe it's just as simple as this. Let's have a difficult conversation. Can we assume the best no matter where we go in this? And if something goes awry and you're triggered by something, can you tell me why? Because maybe I didn't even mean it that way. So much easier to do in a one-on-one conversation, which is so funny why I have historically found it scarier than broadcasting to 10,000 people.
What I'm hearing you say is, how do we do that? And that's what's in the book, and I'm glad you asked, and I'm just going to break it very simply down, take home value. Two things. One, the space. What does the space mean? Articulating your intention. You just articulate your intention, like, can we have a conversation, a difficult conversation, and if I trigger you or something happens, you tell me why. You just articulated your intention. I want to create a space, which is different than an agenda. Let's make a distinction between intention and agenda. Agenda is where you want to end up. I want you to apologize to me. I want you to say sorry. I want you to beg for forgiveness. I want you to explain why the hell you did da. I want you to take responsibility that is an agenda. You want to get to a certain end. Intention is where you begin, right? It's rooted in the curiosity of, I want to know, I would like to know, I'm curious to know what this is. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know where we'll end up, but this is where I want to create that's articulating the intention. That creates the space. And the second part is well-constructed questions. And there's 5 parts to well-constructed questions in the scope of relationship that we can get into. But those are the 2 pieces: create the space, well-constructed questions. And we could talk more about the space. The space also gives permission to give and receive. And I can give an example of that.
I would love the example.
Your partner comes home and says, Melissa, I love you so much. I can't believe how much I love you. Can I tell you how much I love you? This is da-da-da-da. And you're there washing the dishes, cleaning the room, reading a book, watching TV, working. You're not really accepting the love that they're articulating to you because you're wondering, what the hell happened? Where's this coming from? You just came in the door. What just happened? Similarly, he comes home, or your partner comes home and says, Melissa, why do you love me? You're not really wondering why you love that person. You're wondering why they're asking me this question. The space hasn't been created. Now, we, for instance, in the end, we have all these videos, but we also have these editions of card games that we sell, right? 12 editions of the Ant card game, so you can ask questions. If your partner comes home with the card game and says, hey, I want to play this game. It's a game of questions. We're going to ask each other these random questions. And they pull out, why do you love me? Oh, now the space is created. Because you're not wondering, why are they asking me? You know why they're asking you. You're playing a game. So now the space has been created for you to give the answer and for the other person to receive. We need to create spaces. Just like we have spaces in our home where we cook, the kitchen, or where we sleep, the bedroom. But we don't sleep in the kitchen. We don't cook in the bedroom. Why are we not creating the same spaces in the home of our relationship where certain things happen? When you do that, you're creating a space where you're giving each other permission to give and receive. You're answering all the unnecessary questions so that we can actually sit down with the distillation of what we want to exchange.
I love that. I'm reminded of, I did an intimacy workshop with my husband once. And one of the things, it's actually probably the only thing that we left with. It was all a very weird experience, and somehow the couple ended up opening up their erectile dysfunction issue and are just looking at each other like, I did not know we were here for this. But the goodness that we left with was this idea of landing. And she talks about how important it is just to, when a partner comes home, a lot of times, especially when you have kids, you're doing a bunch of stuff. It's like, oh, hey, whatever. It's like just that one moment, allow the energy to land, like embrace them. And I love that because it's like creating a ritual for this space, a spatial ritual, so that you know what to expect when you come home. And regardless of what either of you are stressed with, you have a moment to just connect, hold each other, be in that same, create your own container really, and then separate and go about the daily business. And it's just such a brief thing, but it does make such a difference.
There's so much advice on how to change your behavior, but it's a lot easier to change your behavior if you change your environment. And you don't have to change the whole home, but just create a space where certain things happen. And it could be physical, but it could also be just in a mentality, right? Every day before we leave, we take a moment, we take a breath, we look at each other, and I say goodbye. Or we take the same breath and we say goodbye. You make that a ritual. You're therefore creating a space where in this moment, this is what we do, right? So that is really helpful. It's creating a habit. It's creating a ritual. It's creating a practice where certain things can happen. And when certain things happen, then you're experiencing a different part of life that can be more enriching, that you're creating, right? I mean, whenever I rent an Airbnb, I'm looking for the stove. I'm looking for where's the fireplace? What's the vibe in the fireplace? Because of my family or my friends, we're going to go away for a weekend, or my team, we're going to go for a retreat. I'm looking at the physical space. What will it feel like around that fireplace? Because I know that the certain conversations will happen around that fireplace versus a conference room. So how do you create that in your relationship? It doesn't have to be complicated. I'm just saying that's part of creating the space. Certain things happen in certain spaces. So create the space in which you want certain things to happen.
My mother-in-law is, I call her the nook maker, because she lives in the middle of the woods, has a bunch of land. And it's so interesting, like our different definitions of wealth, because We grew up with not a lot, and the house was small, and it was like being hand built and added on to, and there's just not a lot of space there. But they have so much land and so much family on that land. It's actually 120 acres divided across a bunch of family members. So there's like 100 family members on this land. But what she's done so great is like you can walk on the little trails, and there'll be, oh, here's the spot with the little trailer and the 2 lawn chairs. Here's a little pond they dug out with a couple of chairs. And she just has all of these little spots. Now, her husband's 83. She's like 70 at this point. And they have such an amazing relationship versus, no offense to my parents, but they've got a great relationship too. But their end of the night ritual is just TV usually. And that's so many people's ritual.
Who's your parents?
My parents versus my mother-in-law. Right. Whereas they are sitting outside in front of a little frog pond, connecting and talking and getting to know each other better. And at the end of every day when we put our kids down, I create little nooks in the house now. And we go up to the office, we have the couch, we get our sparkling waters. I've talked about this in an episode before, but it's our little ritual and it's so simple, but it's where we connect rather than just sitting and zoning out. We know we don't have a lot of time. And so we really have to look at, like, what do you value? What do you want your life to be? Am I building that into my life and into my relationships? And if relationships aren't up there, then just know that the longest study on happiness ever goes back to your connections. It is 100% proven that your connections are going to have a direct impact on your happiness. So if you're not prioritizing those, and you can say, well, I don't have a lot of good connections in my life, well, then you have all the opportunity in the world to build, to figure out where do people hang out that I would like to connect with? How can I meet people? I've moved around a lot. I've tried Bumble BFF. I've gotten Facebook groups. I need friends. When I moved to Big Bear, I was like, I need friends. I'm pregnant right now. And I got a bunch of responses of pregnant women, and I am still friends with those people. And so you really have to be conscious about it instead of just expecting life to take in the hand you're dealt, I suppose.
Agency. You have agency. Agency. You have agency, but we don't always know how to wield it. We don't know how to yield it. We don't know how to utilize it. So creating space is really helpful because it gives permission to give and receive, to do something, to say something, to be something in a space. And I think that's really valuable. That's why sometimes road trips are great for a conversation. Because at some point you're done listening to music or a podcast or audiobook and there's nowhere to go. You're just driving across the countryside. And so then you know why they're asking these questions, because there's nothing else to do, right? But if you're, going for a 5-minute shop to the shop and your partner asks you kind of a deep question, you're like, wait, where's this coming from? But if you're on a long road trip, they're not saying where's this coming from. They know where it's coming from because there's nothing else to do, right? We've been on the road for a long time. So how do we give each other permission to give and receive, to ask certain things? It's as simple as that, right? And just take home value. If you want to create the space, you can light candles, you can do that. You can just very basic articulate your intention, which is where you're coming from.
Give me an example from your life where asking better questions led to a significant change in a relationship.
So this is probably the biggest offering. This is take home, is stop looking for answers, create better questions. The question shapes the answer. There is so much power in the one who asked the question and because you're shaping the answers by the question you're asking. Why do we fight so much? Okay, you're going to get a long list of why we fight so much. If you shift that to, what's our biggest challenge right now, and what do you think it's teaching us? Like, why are we asking a question for a list of why we fight so much? How does that make you feel empowered? How does that give you agency? If you shift the question to, what's our biggest challenge right now, and was it teaching us, then you're utilizing the challenge as a learning opportunity, and you're shifting. The answer will now be more empowering, gives you more agency to shape your life. I think one time I got dumped living in New York, and I was a hopeless romantic, and I fell in love with this woman. I think it was like I can't even remember. I I've been married now, so I'm together now with my wife for 6 years. So, and I don't live in New York anymore. So it feels so far away, but I got dumped and my heart was broken. And I remember getting into a subway. It's not the first time I got dumped or got rejected or ghosted. I don't even remember how it happened, but I really wanted to spend time with this person and they disappeared on me. And yes, my heart was broken. And I sat in the subway and I was going up to see some friends in Central Park or something. And I was sitting there and I go, why'd she dump me? Why'd she dump me? Right? And I'm looking at why am I not good enough? Why am I not good enough? And all the answers I kept getting did not make me feel better. And I said, Topaz, you've been here before. How many times has this happened to you? This is the 18th time I've been dumped, 15th, whatever it is, 5th time. Why don't I just change another question? I'm going to change it to, what am I going to take away from this experience that will prepare me for the next one? I just changed the question. And then I say, okay, well, I'm going to take away from this that I showed up fully, vulnerably. I opened up. It didn't work out. And the next one, I'm going to do the same. I'm not going to let that shut me down. I changed the question. And I think profoundly, fundamentally, we should just change the question. And we are all so focused on the answers that we're not looking at the questions we're asking. And the questions often are not even our own. There are parents, there are friends group, there are bosses, there are families. It's society's questions. What are the questions you're asking yourself? Are they giving you answers that are empowering, give you opportunity, give you agency, that give you things to learn and grow, and make you feel better versus make you feel worse?
When you're engaging in these types of questions with a loved one, a partner, whatever, how do you use that idea that you talked about where you, on the AND project, you focus on both people's reactions? Do you have an intention to tune into their reactions in a way to connect you better? Does that make sense?
Mm-mm. You mean in my life with one other person?
Yeah, because you say in the filmmaking process of the AND, you show both people's faces in a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
How has that changed the way that you tune into other people's facial expressions when you're talking to them? Has it?
Well, yeah. I mean, for sure. If I put you in front of 1,200 hours, that's like, and maybe I haven't watched all of it, but if I put you in front of 5,000 hours of people talking, where you see close up of their faces, you're going to become incredibly attuned to micro gestures. And I was already, aware of people because I was a film director and very kind of attuned emotionally. But after spending all this time, and our editors that are cutting the AND videos and the Skin Deep team, I mean, after a year of doing it, their emotional intelligence and articulation increases so much, their ability to read people's faces, because you're picking up all these nuances and you really become more aware, of what you're getting. It's not what people say, it's how they say it, in the tone, in the facial movement. There's a lot to be said there. And I think that's actually a beautiful thing, because bottom line is, you don't always have to give an answer. But what's really helpful is to sit in the question. What do I mean? You and a partner, you and your dad, you and somebody in your family, in the game of the AND, you have the right to pass. You don't have to answer every question. And the reason that is because if you force people to answer, they're in a corner and they're not answering with their heart, they're answering with their mind to protect themselves. Because the mind is built to protect, while the heart is built to connect. And the idea is, how do we bring the heart out? So if you force them to answer every question, then they have to defend themselves. If you give them the right to pass, that they don't have to answer, it's an invitation, right? So you want to create the spaces for the heart to enter. So you don't force them to give an answer. They have the right to pass. So you ask the question, and maybe you both don't want to talk about it, but you're both thinking about it. You're both wondering, what is the other person thinking? How would I respond if I were them? How would I respond being me? And even though you don't both articulate the answer, you're both sitting in the question. And that's what's really important, is to sit in the discomfort of the questions, not necessarily get to a resolution or the answer. Right? And I know some people might think, oh my God, what is this guy talking about? People are just sitting, no answers, we're not getting to a resolution. Look, there are certain conversations where you need to know answers and you got to get to a result, because you're going to execute, you're going to implement. You need to know the bottom line. But I'm talking about the conversations that are exploring your relationship so that you see what it is, that you feel what it is. That's what I'm talking about, right? Here's one aspect of making a good question. If you start any question with an is, an are, or a do, are we in love? Do you love me? Is this the right relationship? Any question that starts with an is, an are, or a do is asking for a yes or no answer, or a binary answer, right? When you're exploring your relationship, do you want the binary or do you want to explore? Do you want to create a question that offers you not a binary? Because sometimes in your partner, you don't just want to exit the conversation. It's like asking your kids, how was your day? Good. Did you have a good day? Yes. Did you play with your friends? Yes. Right? In what way was your day good? Oh, well, you can't answer that with a yes, no, good, bad. In what way was your day good? Right? So, yeah, shaping the question shapes the answers, and having conversations that explore your relationship give you a greater sense of what the relationship is and can be.
What are some of the other components of an effective question?
In the scope of a relationship, there's 5 different ones that we've picked out. One I just said is a binary. Don't ask a binary question because it just gives you a binary response. Yes, no, either or, and the conversation's over. Another one is making the question a connective question. What do I mean by connective question? If I said, Melissa, what scares you the most? And your husband said, hey, Melissa, what scares you the most? And I don't know, a random stranger says, what scares you the most? The answer is going to be the same. Snakes, skydiving, whatever it is, right?
Losing my children.
Losing your children, clearly. But if we change the question to, what do you think scares us both the most? And I ask you that, and your husband asks you that, and a stranger asks you that, it's not going to be the same answer because it's acknowledging, right? What do you think we both fear the most? What do you think scares and excites us the most? Whatever. It's including the person asking the question. It's about both of you, not just the other person. See? So adding to the question to make it a connective question that acknowledges our relationship makes it a unique to that moment and to that relationship, right? You're on a date. What does love mean to you? Okay? So you go on 5 dates, you get 5 people asking you that question, you're going to answer the same thing. What love means is that. If instead you change the question to like, what do you think love, in what ways do you think we see love the same and different? What does love mean to both of us in your opinion? In your opinion, what do you think love means to both of us? Right? That's like they have to take the other person in consideration. You're taking the other person, you're taking the relationship into consideration, and you're speaking about that, which makes that conversation very unique because it's acknowledging the people who are in it. Not to mention, when you ask that question, you're probably more interested in the answer because you're part of the projection of the response, right? There's others. You want me to continue, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, these are fascinating.
Yeah.
I'm crafting my life based off of these questions right now.
I think there's an immense amount of power in the power of questions. And, this is my, 40th podcast for the book. And obviously I say that because I've been finding what really moves people in the conversations. And the bottom line is there is so much power in the question. Even the question, you're with your partner, anybody you work with, your friend, family, and you say, why do we have this conflict? You're giving the other person, why do we have this conflict? You're giving the other person to be the arbiter of truth by saying, why do we have this conflict? Because they're going to say, well, we have this conflict because this and that. Well, you're then going to respond, wait, no, that's not why. It's because of this or that. But if you simply add the words, do you think or do you feel? Now they're no longer the objective arbiter of truth. They're the arbiter of their subjective truth. This is what I think. Why do you think we have this conflict? And you can say why you think, and there's nothing for me to argue with. That's your opinion. That's your feeling, right? Just shifting that creates a space for the hearts to engage with each other versus the mind. Because as soon as I say, why do we have a conflict? And you say this, I'm putting you in the position of the objective, the truth, the arbiter of objective truth. And I'm going to disagree with that or not. But I say, do you think, do you feel? Oh, space. This is your opinion. I can't argue with your opinion about what you think or feel. That's what you feel. So just adding those 2 words creates a space for us to actually hear each other versus combat each other.
I know there's a lot of people in my audience that have reached out, and if they all got in a room, they would have such an easy time doing practices like this because they're all on similar growth paths. And the difficult thing is, well, my partner's not interested in any of this. My mom has no idea about growth. So when I sit there and I try to create a container of safety, they're looking at me like I'm nuts. What are the ways that you've found, whether to word it or to set that stage without appearing like you're coming over in your woo-woo suit? Hey, I'm creating a safe space for our conversation right now, and just getting the eye roll back.
It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I think, well, I think articulating your need and your want, your intention, right? Look, this is what I like to do. Can we do this? And a big part of that is that, if that gets flatly refused, then I think this is not the only thing that gets flatly refused in a relationship. If you want to have a conversation and that gets flatly refused, that's not the only thing that's getting flatly refused in a relationship. But say they say, okay, I understand. And we get that a lot in the end when we do productions. There's usually one person who really wants to have the conversation and the other one who's reticent. And this is where there's a flip. If you're going to invite your partner or somebody into a conversation and they're willing to step into that space with you, you now have to let go of your agenda. You have to now accept them for who they are. That's one of the reasons why everyone has a right to pass. They don't have to answer. They're sitting in the space with you. If they're not responding as articulate as you want, if they're not going as vulnerable as you want, you have to let that be. You have to accept that. You have to accept them for who they are, where they are at now. And by doing that, what you're fundamentally saying is, thank you for joining me in this experience. It was safe. They feel like they were safe, even though it was uncomfortable. It was safe because you were not pressing an agenda on them, getting them to a certain position, to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to respond a certain way. You were accepting them for who they are, where they were at. And that means that the next time they'll be more interested in joining because they know it's a safe space, even though it might be, albeit uncomfortable. So if your partner flatly refuses to join, then I suggest there's probably bigger problems because there's probably other things. But if they do join, you cannot push on them to be a certain way. You have to accept them for who they are and let them know that you see them and you're grateful that they even sat in the question with you. And then make it a practice. Let's do this next week. Let's see where it goes, right? When we film the ant, sometimes one of my directors will be, I remember one time she was in Paris and she called me. She goes, Topaz, they're just not crying. They're not crying. The French are not getting it. I'm like, that's because you think they should be crying. They are who they are. It is what it is. We're just grateful for them being in the space. There's something to learn from every conversation. It doesn't have to get and be a certain way. You have to allow and see what is, and then invite for another one, right? Because at least your partner goes, oh, I didn't get emotional as I thought they wanted me. They accepted me for who I am. Okay, now I can do this again because I can be who I am at this moment. And then what happens, like you ride a bike, you fall down the first, second, third time, and they start practicing. Then the second, third time, they might explore something new. Maybe they start modeling how you're responding to questions.
I have had this intention in conversations lately of how can I connect to the person under the armor, under our programming, underneath all the things that we create that caricature from. And this idea came up, well, it's more helpful in conversation because or in conflict, I mean. I realized there was a specific person in my family that I just kept jumping to that idea of who they were, and it was becoming really hard to connect on a different level. And there's this book by Neil Donald Walsh. It's a kid's book actually, but it's called The Little Soul, and it's based off of conversations with God. And it just helps you remember, what if this is a little contract between you and another person and they came here to be your point of strife so that you could learn to forgive? They love you so much. They're willing to get on your nerves your whole life. And I was thinking about this because we talked about how I have a 3-year-old and man, he's at the pushing boundaries stage. He's like this tiny little genius, and 70% of the time he's just such an angel. And then the 30%, he's like looking at me in the eyes while he's doing something, just to push those, spitting juice on the rug or something while making eye contact with me because he knows I can't get there fast enough. And I found myself one day, we were going over to somebody's house and I had this thought of, I hope everything goes well. I hope they see who he really is and it's not just like some behavioral issues over there. And then it got me thinking, isn't that a gift we should be giving to everyone? I know my child and then I know the phase. And so I'm like, please don't just see the phase. Please have his little genius fly out during this interaction. But we're sitting here creating that shell for everybody, seeing them through our biases rather than this intention to really just get to the core and the essence of who they are before they started to protect themselves.
Yes. And shouldn't we offer that to ourselves?
Yes.
Right. I mean, I have someone very close to me and I can't have the conversations with them. And I had to let that go. And for a long time, I thought that the fact that we weren't having the conversations was a sign that they didn't really love me. And then I realized that those kind of conversations they found emotionally hurtful. They didn't want to go that real. They didn't want to be that honest. They couldn't. And I had to learn to let go and accept that's the extent of where that relationship can be. And it's very painful. And I think I learned it in therapy because they joined me in therapy. And I understood that, this kind of conversation, it's not that they don't want to have it with me. They just don't want to have it, period, with anybody. And it's not that they're keeping me out of the room. They just don't even want to go in that room. They don't even know that room exists in the house. They're not interested. No. So it's not that their lack of love for me. It's just they're just incapable of doing that. So I have to let go of wanting to have that type of connection with them and I have to find another type of connection to have with them. That's what I'm currently experiencing, and I haven't cracked that code, but that's something that comes up for me. But of course, I have other people in my life that I can most definitely be in that space with, like my wife, right? Like some of my best friends,
It makes you wonder, if you think of an ocean, there are the deep sea dwellers, and then there are the fish that stay at the surface. Maybe we're not all meant to go deep. Maybe there's a gift in surface level relationships. I'm still trying to find that. I'm always like, God, you just want to go deeper.
I mean, you could have great surface level questions that are just great. Like, what do you do with your valuable time? You meet someone at the bar, like, well, hey, where are you from? What do you do? Like, what do you do with your most valuable time? And then they go pause and they go, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, well, we all have work and you're taking care of your kids. And what's your most valuable time? Is that 5 minutes when you go to the bathroom in the morning before you have to take care of the kids and food? What are you doing with your most valuable time? Interesting question. It's not necessarily deep and like emotional or crying, but it's a different kind of question.
This is why I don't go to bars anymore. I used to turn to people and say, when was the last time you cried and why?
but we have like a dating edition. We have an amusing edition, which are different kinds of questions, just to make it different, so that your neural nodes you're connecting two thoughts that you haven't connected before. That creates a pause. In that pause, you're exploring some new thought. You're exploring a new emotion, new perspective, and then you learn something new. You feel something new. Oh, that's fun. That's called living.
I love those card decks because it gives you something to blame the depth on. My husband and I do them all the time, and I can ask an out of the blue question and he won't even ask why anymore. Like, I am who I am. That's just what I like to do. It's like, if I died, how long would it take you to move on? Like, it doesn't matter where it's coming from. But I have a harder time with my parents, my mom and my stepdad. My stepdad's just kind of a surface level guy. And then my mom and I had gotten into a dynamic where we both had a hard time getting over our agenda. We have been doing better lately. So there's that. But bringing out those cards, you could kind of see my stepdad being all disgruntled, shuffling away the first few times. But then he's like, and he starts to get into it. But it's not me. It's the card. It's like, sorry, I'm not asking this. It's on the card.
Exactly.
Written down.
And you don't have to answer it, right? We're both thinking about what the answer is. Everyone is thinking about what they think the answer is and what it's not. And sometimes what's beautiful is you're in a group setting, you're playing with your friends. Everyone's thinking what that person is going to say. And then what they say is so much more profound and deeper than any of you have imagined. Or it's so surprising, or it's so true and on point that it reaffirms your sense of, wow, I know that person, or I see that person. And ultimately it reaffirms your sense of humanity. Because humanity is what exists between us, not in us.
Well, I have loved this conversation. We've done quite a few episodes on having difficult conversations, on how to listen deeply, but I love the space between, the emphasis that you have on the collective consciousness of when two people come together, and really how to lean into that to get the most out of that relationship. And so I love leaving listeners with something actionable, a little piece of mind love for the week. What would you leave them with?
Pay attention to the questions you're asking yourself and change them. You wake up in the morning and you think, oh shit, I got to do that. What you don't realize is that, oh shit, I got to do that is an answer to a question. So change the question. Instead of asking yourself, oh, what do I have to do? Oh shit, I got to do that. Go, what part of my day today is going to be awesome? You know you have a horrible day lined up, but there's 2 minutes when you're going to play with your kid. That's going to be awesome. So instead of saying, oh shit, I got to do that, you go, oh yeah, I'm going to have 2 minutes with my kid. Change the question. Whenever you see yourself stymied with a question, a challenge, you need to have a talk with someone, you're feeling bad about yourself, just stop. And you're looking for an answer, just stop. What's the question I'm asking myself? And then change it and make it an empowering one.
For listeners who are jiving with this as much as I am, where's the best place for them to find your book, 12 Questions for Love, and you?
12 Questions for Love is available everywhere and anywhere. It's available as hardcover on Amazon and wherever you get your books, audiobook and ebook. For all our products, digital and the physical card games and all that, theskindeep.com. Just go to theskindeep.com. And all our social media, like all the videos we have and everything is on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, like The Skin Deep. So that's a great place. That's really where I'm sending everyone. I mean, obviously I have my topazadizes.com website, but really it's theskindeep.com. It's the Skin Deep social media channels. And 12 Questions for Love.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/355. Your challenge for this week is to change the question. Change the first question of the day. Instead of thinking, what do I have to do today? Ask yourself, what part of today is going to be awesome? There's actually a question that we say around our breakfast table that I got from the Best Self Journal, and it's, what would make today great? Or it might even be from the 5-Minute Gratitude Journal. I don't know. But whatever it's from, I love that habit. Right now, my 3-year-old is in a phase where he always answers it, nothing. But I know one day we'll get there. It's a good reframing. We're so used to being on defense of our own lives that we don't remember, we often forget that we are the ones creating it. We are powerful creators. And it takes that thought, that knowing that you can shift into the place of power and shift into the place of creation rather than reaction and defense. And this is such a great and easy way to do that. I have a couple announcements. First off, I was putting out my emails all about the next round of Soul Strength activation, and I had a ton of people ask when the following one would be because they're right in the middle of summer. And so I decided to push it back just a month. So it's going to be launching in August now. So if that changes things for you, get excited. This next round is going to be so great. It actually gives me time to revamp a couple things, add some really exciting pieces that I've been mulling over. So if you're interested in that, send me a DM at MindLoveMelissa on Instagram or shoot me an email. You can even reply back to any of the morning Mind Loves. There's also the September retreat coming up. I have 4 rooms left as of recording this. So reach out to me if you're interested in that. It's going to be so exciting. I pulled out all the stops for this one. Think ultimate luxury, self-care, transformation, leaving in an entire new energy than you came in. And finally, you can find all of my amazing sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.
Hi, welcome to IKEA.
Can you turn back time? I'm sending my baby to college.
We don't do time travel, but we can make sure you find affordable, stylish options they'll love.
Aww.
Also visit our website to see how verified college students with an IKEA family account can receive a one-time use 15% off coupon.
Double
Offer in September 30th, 2025. Valid ID required. Discount apply proportionally across items purchased as shown on receipt. See IKEA-USA.com/ready-for-college for complete terms.
In the time it takes you to actually board that flight from Group 8,
Now boarding Premier Altitude Elite Club members.
you could have bought a Hyundai on Amazon. Yes, that Amazon, where you buy everything else.
Mid-tier Altitude Elite, feel free to board now.
So while you're waiting for them to make up new boarding groups, you can order your dream car and the dealer will have it ready in no time.
Now boarding groups 1 through 7.
So close. Visit HyundaiUSA.com or call 562-314-4603 for more details. Limited availability, pickup through participating Hyundai dealer in select markets.